Hello and welcome to PhotoWalkthrough.com. This is Tutorial 3, Chapter 1. And the big news is that this is officially now a video podcast. You can either go to PhotoWalkthrough.com and subscribe to the podcast using one of the subscribe buttons there, or you can go to the iTunes Music Store podcast directory and search for PhotoWalkthrough.com there and subscribe through iTunes. Today I'm going to be looking at a panoramic image I took of some beautiful blue and orange skies that I looked out of my window a couple of weeks ago and saw these wonderful stripes of colour in the sky. I don't know why they were stripes of colour in the sky, but I grabbed my camera and my coat, headed outside and took as many photos as I could before the light went. And what you see here is a selection of 14 images I took. If you look on the left here, this is Photoshop Adobe Bridge that comes with Photoshop CS2. I actually took a series of panoramas, and the one that I'm going to show you is the one that came out best. These are 14 raw images I took. I just stood in the corner of a field near where I live, pointed the camera and turned and clicked and turned and clicked and turned and clicked. So this is all just handheld. I wasn't on a tripod, I didn't do anything clever. I just tried to make sure I got a bit of the previous image into the next one I took. So if you look at these first two, you can see this stripe here is then also here, and you can just see I was just turning the camera a little each time as I went. So let's zoom back out so we can see all the images. And what I'm going to do is select the first one by clicking on it, select the last one by shift clicking on it, and then I'm going to open all of these by right clicking on one, and I'm going to choose Open in Camera Raw, which is going to bring up the Photoshop RAW plugin, which I'm afraid is too large to see. I'm working at 800 by 600 pixels, so it's a little bit too large to fit it all in the window, but I'll scroll it around so you can see what's going on. On the left here we have all 14 images that I just had opened in Bridge, all in a column here, and we can choose any of those images by clicking on them. I'm going to work on the first one, and I'm going to then apply the settings from that first one to all the others. So here's the first one. Here's the view of the image in the center here, and if I scroll this window over a little, here are the sliders that allow us to change the settings for that image. Now first of all, I tend to go down these one at a time from top to bottom. Looking at this image, I don't see much of a colour cast. This image, the final panoramic after I've stitched it together, is going to be all about the colours in the sky. So I'm just looking at the blues and the sort of cyan blues and the oranges, and I'm thinking what I want is lots of detail and texture in that sky, and I want the colours to really stand out. So at the moment I don't see much of a colour cast that I want to correct, but if I did, I could drag that temperature slider left and go more towards the blue, or drag it right and go more towards the reddy orange colours. And if I wanted to change the tint, you can go left there, that gives more green, or right gives more magenta. I'm just going to go back to our shot because I think it looked okay, and I'm just going to start off by playing with the exposure. You'll notice, by the way, I'm using the scrubby sliders here. I find that more easy than clicking on these tiny little slider buttons here. So just click on the word, and your cursor turns into this little hand with the arrows, and you can drag that up and down. And I'm going to just the image. Let me just, if you do Control U, that's how the image looked when it came out of the camera. If you press Control U, it'll turn on all these little auto checkboxes. So Control U just turns all of them on. And then if you want to turn them all off again, press Control U again, and it takes it back to the way the image looked to start with. So starting at the top, I'm going to click the exposure and just drag that up a little bit. You see these little red pixels appearing in the sky here? This is because I've got the highlights turned on at the top here. I'll turn the shadows on as well. You can turn those on and off with the U and O keys. And what those are telling me is that I've now dragged the exposure up so high that these bits of the sky are getting blown out. They're getting overexposed. So if I drag that down just to sort of 0.3, I'm just seeing just a couple of pixels, and that's fine. The shadows, I've already got a couple of blue pixels to show that that area is underexposed, so I'm going to just experiment just by dragging the shadows up, and you can see loads of blue appearing, loads of underexposure, and you can see on the histogram that there's loads of stuff hitting the left-hand edge of the histogram. That's not good. I don't want any of that, so I'm going to drag the shadows down to 0. I'm going to drag the brightness up just a little bit, just to try and keep some detail in the houses. I'm going to mostly get rid of the detail in the houses in the post-processing. But I may as well have as much information as I can when I'm working with images. So I've brightened it just a little bit, move all the tones to the right, and I'm going to increase the contrast because, as I said before, this image is all going to be about the detail in the sky and the colours in the sky. And so I'm just giving myself as much range of values as I can in the sky by increasing the contrast. I'm going to leave the saturation alone. I don't think it needs messing with. And I'm just going to go down to the bottom of this window to show you some more settings. Now, when you open this window for the first time, you might find that this Show Workflow Options isn't ticked. If you tick it, you get these extra options down at the bottom here. Now, first of all, color space. You want to be working in Adobe RGB 1998. There are a number of other options here, including this bottom one that you can't quite see, sRGB. You might want, when you're exporting images for use on the web, to export them with a color space of sRGB. But while you're working on them, work on them in Adobe RGB. The reason for that is that Adobe RGB can capture more color values than sRGB can. It can represent more colors. It's a wider gamut color space, and it gives you more capability when you're editing your images for representing a broader range of colors. So choose Adobe RGB. It's a good mid capability, useful for printing color space to use. Now normally for color depth you would use 8 bits per channel. The reason I'm going for 16 bits per channel on this image is that because I'm working in the sky, there's a lot of blue tones, and the blue channel tends to be fairly noisy, and it's quite easy to get solarization and some fairly nasty noise and grain and stuff in the sky. So I try and give myself as much image data as I can, try and give myself as much color data as I can by using 16 bits per channel, and hopefully after I've done a load of dodging and burning and contrast work on it, hopefully it will still look good by the end. So this is really just protecting myself for later. We've also got a size dialog here, 6.3 megapixels, which has got no plus or minus after the end. That's the regular size of the image that comes out of my camera. I could downsample it down to 1.6 megapixels or 2.8 megapixels if I wanted, or just off the bottom of the screen here there's also I could upsample it to 11.2, 17.5 and so on. This is a pretty good way if you want to upsample your images to a larger pixel size. It actually gives reasonably good results. So if you've got a camera that's only say 6 megapixels and you need to be submitting 12 or 14 megapixels to stock photography sites or whatever, this is one reasonably good way of upsampling your images right at the start of the process in the RAW converter. I'm going to leave that on 6.3, and I'm going to leave the resolution at 240 pixels per inch. Almost never need to meddle with that. So that's those settings there. Let me drag this back over here so you can see the list of images here on the right. We've still got this first image selected, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to hit the select all button up here. All these other images now lit up, but the one with the thick line around it is the one that we're still looking at. If I now hit synchronize, this synchronize box pops up, and I can say which of the settings I would like to synchronize with the other images. The source image is the one with a thick line around it, the one we were looking at. So I'm going to choose everything except crop, and I'm going to press OK, and all the other images are automatically updated. And what that's doing is it's not changing the raw values in the raw file. It's writing a sidecar file which just says these settings that we've chosen in the sliders over here on the right are what we're going to use when we come to export this with a JPEG. So the actual raw data itself is not changed, it's just we write some settings that say how the file will be exported later. So having done all of that, I've applied my raw settings to all those other images. I'm going to just press done. I'm not going to open these in Photoshop. I'm just going to leave them in a bridge with those settings applied to them. And in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export those images to JPEG, and I'm going to stitch them together. I will see you in the next one.